You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Welcome to today's episode. I am so excited today because we have a special guest. We have Emilee Fry, who is a business coach and a mindset mentor, and she is on a mission to help all of our introverted and sensitive gals listening to shift their mindsets to break through their limiting beliefs. Emilee helps her clients accomplish their goals by focusing on what to do and what to ignore in their marketing strategies. After learning to thrive as an introvert, Emilee wanted to create a space and program where introverted women could learn to reach their goals and crush their limiting beliefs. Whether she's teaching entrepreneurs to market their business in a way that builds relationships or helping them craft coffee that makes them more visible to their clients, Emilee leverages her ability to inspire introverted women to take action. And I just thought, I'm an introverted person myself. I know we have listeners who are thinking of starting something or beginning their business, their creative project, but are feeling like, oh my gosh, it means being visible. It means putting myself out there. How do I do that? And so Emilee is here to have a conversation around that today to really empower you to feel more confident doing it in your way. So welcome, Emilee.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about, getting started in the online space as an introvert because I do think it's so challenging for those of us who are not super natural at, putting ourselves out there. It can be really challenging at first. And I feel like a lot of the people in your audience are copywriters. And so, they have the communication aspect down. They know how to write brilliant content, but just learning how to take things a step further and get visible with video and podcast interviews like this, it can be really challenging. And so I'm just excited to share some tips.
Awesome. I'm so excited. How did you first get into this world? What did you have to work through when it came to getting visible yourself as a business owner?
Oh my goodness, I had to work through so much. So, I started out as a podcast manager and I still do some of that. And I really leaned on referrals for a long time. But with that, you kind of hit a growth plateau. And if you want to grow, to six figures and beyond, you have to get out of your comfort zone. There's just no way around it. And so I realized that. And some of my biggest blocks were around just taking up space.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll share like a little story of where I think that some of this came from. I used to be a baton twirler in high school, and I had a coach that was not really the nicest to me. And as a teenager, I kind of internalized her criticisms and I thought, something must be wrong with me. My best was never good enough. I shouldn't have even put myself out there. And so I took that as a sign that I should play small to avoid criticism in my life. And so it took a lot of working with a coach, a lot of journaling, a lot of mindset work to learn that there are safe and beautiful people out there in this world who will love your message, who will resonate with you. And you can't just let one experience or one naysayer hold you back. But it's a mind game.
It is. Yeah, I love that you share that story because I think it has to come from somewhere, right? Like we all probably have something in us. If you look at little kids, like the way they sing, the way they perform, it's so loud and proud. Even if they're like terrible at it, they're just so enthusiastic about sharing their gifts with the world. And then there is some point where, whether it's school, a teacher, whether it's social media, family, or caretaker, there's usually something that kind of makes people go, oh, wait, like this is something I should be a little bit more careful of. Maybe I'll hold this a little bit closer. So I just love that you have a story to even pinpoint and know where that started from. Do you say that's one of the first steps, is almost just identifying like, or being aware of, where did this kind of come from in you? And then from there you can kind of start to lovingly rework that story a little bit.
Absolutely. I think identifying the source and, I think when we talk to people about things, shame cannot live in that space. When we are in community with others and we have uplifting people in our lives to kind of call out the BS that our inner
Yeah.
critic and the games and the tricks that our mind is trying to play on us. And for me, I think the biggest shift was learning about shared humanity and just realizing that life is challenging for everybody, even the highest performers and the people who you think look 100% confident on social media. They have flaws too, they get nervous too. And just realizing that, it's okay to be a beginner, it's okay to fail. Um, I love this quote by Brene Brown, and I think it really shifted things for me. She said, imperfections are not inadequacies, they are reminders that we're all in this together. So I think that when you stop othering yourself and saying there's something wrong with me, and you own that you are worthy and you have a place in this world and you deserve to take up space and have a voice, it's so much easier to show up from that energy and that confident place.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love the work that Brene Brown does around shame and just reframing those perspectives that said, let me hold this close or let me not be vulnerable, or leading from a way that says that's okay, that's actually embraced. I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like whenever I've been nervous to share a certain part of my story, those are actually the times when people reach out to me most and feel most connected.
100%. I think that in the past, I have leaned on like the analytical side of things and sharing a lot of tips and tricks and educational content and
Yeah.
not tapping into like authenticity post and vulnerability post. Because for me, it was a little bit harder because when you share your heart, you open yourself up to criticism. But it's so refreshing when you put out your vulnerable story and you see that there are people who are cheering you on, especially in this like online coaching space. I really feel like we are kind of recreating what it means to be successful. And we are owning that as women, we have emotional experiences and that is all intertwined in our work. And it's a beautiful thing to hold space for your mindset wobbles and your emotions and to be authentic and open about that.
Yes. What's one practice that really helped you the most go from being maybe nervous about being visible, sharing your message, being more out there on video or whatever it may be? What's a practice that kind of helped you shift that to actually taking action in that way?
So, the biggest thing has been changing the way that I talk to myself and really kind of pattern interrupting that inner critic. So, I recently read Self Compassion by Kristen Neff, and she shares this exercise that I think is really powerful. And I'll share an example. So, the other day I was rushing to get to yoga class, and when I got there, the door was locked, and I realized that class was already in session. And so my inner critic was really loud. It was like, why are you always late? Why do you always drop the ball in your appointments like this? Fly by the seat
Mhm.
of your pants, whatever. Um, and it's so funny because that like seemingly insignificant moment is so like relatable to how I felt about visibility in the past because I would
Yeah.
feel like I got off the wagon and stopped posting and really beat myself up. And I realized that, you know, that kind of reaction and that kind of negative talk that I was allowing myself to kind of indulge in did not make me want to jump back on the wagon. It did not make me want to take action. And so in that moment, what I did was I said, I talked to myself kind of like I would if I were calming a child. So I said, oh, darling, I'm so sorry that you missed that yoga class that you were really looking forward to. And I know
Aw.
that it's so hard to feel disappointment and anger, especially towards yourself. But you have to remember that everyone has been late to something before, and there's nothing wrong with you. Again, honing in on that shared humanity that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And then I asked myself, what can I do to make myself happier in this moment and to create more positivity in this moment? And so for me, I called my grandma because she's a really grounding force in my life.
Mm.
She just reminds me not to take myself too seriously. And I think sometimes us introverted, really reflective kind of people that can get stuck in our heads need that. But really, you could take any small action. You could go for a run, you could take a hot bath, anything to just interrupt that pattern that you have of indulging that inner critic.
Oh, I love that. That's so sweet and nourishing too, to be able to be that voice for yourself instead of taking it completely the other direction, almost to use your superpower in another way of being reflective and having that really strong inner world and dialogue and say, look, this happens to everyone. What do you need right now to feel better? You can always do this differently next time. I just love that. I've never heard that before said in that way.
I think it's so powerful.
What would you say to any woman who is maybe holding back, who has a dream to start a business or a podcast or to launch some kind of creative project, but she's holding back because of that fear of visibility?
I would say that you need to rip the band aid off and avoid comparing yourself to people that are on like chapter 20 and they're years into their business and shaming yourself for not showing up the way that they are, but just rip the band-aid off and decide what is the next doable baby step that doesn't sound terrifying to me, but it stretches me, that I can do to get visible. So maybe that is posting a selfie and just introducing yourself, and chatting a little bit about the business that you want to start. Maybe you're not even ready to talk about business and you've just never posted your face online. Maybe you just share a selfie and a little life update. But I would say just really try to avoid that comparison trap. Unfollow the people on Instagram if you need to, and just decide what is the most natural next best step for me right now in this chapter in this season.
Yes. The timeline thing is so huge. I remember getting into that especially when I was earlier on in business, because you don't know, you just assume that everyone is naturally so far along, so good at business that everything they post is turning into thousands of sales. And then the further along you get, you realize, oh, like, okay, there's so many different people in different seasons. They could be posting, trying a new strategy they've never tried before. Like, you have no idea what's working for them, what they're going through, how far along they are. So that's such a big one. I just want to reiterate that I love that you brought up is like your starting post could be so different than what someone who has been posting every day, working through the visibility stuff for 2 years, it could look completely different, but that doesn't mean that they didn't start where you were. So you kind of can't skip steps. You just get to start at that place, and that's enough. And in 2 years' time, you will be where some of the people you look up to are. It's just a matter of getting out there and getting started as everyone else has at some point too.
Yes, I love that. And I think, kind of in the same vein of what you said, it's important when you're a beginner to let it be messy because everybody has a crappy first draft at some point.
Yes.
And like you said, you don't get to skip that step. So all we can do is kind of get comfy with that messiness. And I think that when you trust yourself to be really self compassionate and you trust that you are going to speak to yourself kindly, maybe you commit to that, you feel more comfortable being a little bit messy and putting yourself out there and kind of experimenting. And I think it can be really powerful to look at business in the beginning as an experiment. There's going to be trial and error. Nobody gets it right on the first try, but just let yourself play with things and different messages, and try not to take yourself so seriously, which I know can be so difficult in practice.
And maybe can you speak to, for someone who's listening and they're kind of getting the nerve up and they're like, okay, I think I can do this. But if you're just looking at being visible for the sake of being visible, it's a lot harder to want to do it. I have this friend who says, when you look at things, look at what's on the other side of it. Is it worth that scary action for what's on the other side? So, can you speak to what you have seen that's come from actually taking this scary action and being visible? Like, give a taste of like, how has it been worth it for you? Or what have you seen on the other side of those scary steps?
100%. So I fully booked my podcast management business from, really stretching myself and being visible on Instagram. And now I'm working to build a coaching practice. And, I have the flexibility to go and get my son from school every day. I don't have to ask permission, to be off when he's sick. And those are the simple joys that really keep me going. And I heard somebody explain this like, visibility is so uncomfortable for some people, myself included at first. It's almost like a cesspool that you have to swim across. And like you said, you have to have that carrot dangling to motivate you. And so I think sometimes if you have a hard time keeping your eyes set on the bigger vision, it can be helpful to give yourself little small rewards to create that motivation in the short term. So, if you have never gotten visible before, I want you to plan to celebrate the heck out of yourself when you do pull that band aid off. Make it big. Do something like a massage if you can do that.
Yeah,
If not, maybe it's just like a girls' night with friends. You could stay in, just something that sounds really fun to you, and say, okay, I'm only going to do that if I get my visibility action done. And so I think that that big vision is so important, but in the day to day, I feel like those little carrots really keep me motivated.
absolutely. And for you, did you notice that the fear lessened at any point? Like, is it something where you expect the fear and move through it and just get better at navigating the emotions that come with it? Or did you notice that the fear kind of, rescinded, pulled back a little bit the more you did it?
So, yes and no. On Instagram, I feel like for me, the fear is almost completely gone just because I've noticed that, okay, I've posted, hundreds of times and nobody has said anything mean or crazy to me. It might happen one
Yeah.
day, but I'm pretty confident that if that were to happen, that I would be so kind to myself and I would be okay. But I feel like things like external visibility, like this, like being in front of other people's audiences, and kind of being on the spot, like on podcast interviews or live videos and things like that, still feel pretty challenging for me. Um, I suspect that that will get easier as time goes on, but I don't think that my personality will ever change. I think that I will always be an introverted, sensitive, kind of naturally shy person. And so I will always have some level of fear to kind of work through. But I think that it's totally possible to work through that, and it does lessen in some ways, and in some ways it might not, but you kind of have to find your way. So maybe podcast episodes wouldn't be super scary for you, then maybe that's the external visibility that you double down on. So yeah, I think you just have to kind of find what works for you, and again, just experiment.
What has being scared or feeling the fear and doing it anyway taught you about yourself?
It's taught me that, I'm so much more capable than I ever thought that I was. And it's really helped me to combat that limiting belief that I have nothing valuable to say or it's all already been said and done. What do I have to add? When people come to me and they've resonated with what I've said, whether it's on Instagram or a podcast interview, I realized that, hey, like I have valuable, unique experiences to share. And that's kind of motivated me to keep going as well.
I love that. I think you just have such a unique and really honest, beautiful perspective on look, it's natural to feel this way, but instead of letting it stop you, here are some ways that I've navigated it. Here are some ways that you can take steps to do the same. And it's probably just really born naturally out of your work with clients getting through those limiting beliefs and working through that. And so, where can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more, if they want to even work with you around this? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I hang out most of the time over on Instagram. My handle is Simply Polished Media. all together. And I'm also launching a mentorship. It's a 12-week program where you get one on one coaching. It's called Courageously Visible Mentorship. And pretty soon, I will be giving away a scholarship space into that program. So if you go to my bio and you get on the wait list, you can get a chance to get that scholarship. So definitely go run and do that if you're interested in coaching with me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing more about this. I think it's been so interesting to just hear and honestly encouraging and reassuring in a way that for anyone, no matter what stage you're in. So if you're listening and you have the dream to start a business, but you're not quite out there yet, maybe you take that first step and you announce it or you say it out loud to someone or you put it on your social media. Visibility, like the challenges just come in at different stages of business. So like you mentioned, Emily, like you might get less fearful around posting on Instagram or on one channel or one way. And then it comes up as you grow and evolve into another. But it's just really encouraging to hear that we're all in it. We're all sharing some of that. And so we can all just really cheer each other on and know the next time you see someone posting or the next time you post that, people are there with you. They're excited for whatever you're putting out there. Most people are going to be proud of you being brave and sharing your story. And then we all just give each other kind of that room to grow and expand and lean into these other channels as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and just, opening up this platform to normalize this experience. We all experience fear and shame, especially around something brand new, like getting visible and something so intimate. And I think fear and shame, it just hates light being shed on it. And so I just think that these communities and these conversations are so powerful. And thank you again for having me, Jessica. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much for listening in. If this episode resonated with you, I have something you are going to love. Check out brightlifepodcast.com where you can download a free Bright Life Biz Starter Kit full of the steps that helped me go from a 9 to 5 to starting a business, creating more freedom, and finding fulfillment as my own boss. I hope it supports and inspires you further. Thank you so much for being here, and I will chat with you again next week.